So we're finally in here. Good job, admin. So TVZ, best of 3. Whoever loses does have the lower bracket to go through. In the top right is the red Zerg for Storm. It is Ragnarok. In the bottom left was the blue Terran. It is Splice, TY. Splice still having TY and Stats on their team. It was a bit of a surprise to see them let Solar go, considering that he was their first pickup, I believe, and then that he has the best English of anyone. I guess the performances haven't been so good. You know, Stats getting to multiple finals last year was, you know, I think that's decent enough. And then TY, I mean, TY is always got a name to him, you know? It's like Solar is this great Zerg, but he gets overshadowed by the top 3 Zerg of Korea. Rogue, Sue, and Dark. And then he hasn't had any really, like, top-tier performances. And I guess they didn't really use him, like, his ability to speak English that often. So, I mean, I guess in that way it does make sense. And TY might not have had the greatest of performances, well, most of last year anyways. I guess the beginning of last year was actually pretty good. But regardless, he always has a name to him, you know, because his style is so individual. And he does have these really, really fantastic games that make a mark in people's minds, even when he doesn't necessarily win them. So, I mean, that's, I mean, I know nothing about what Splice's arrangement was or anything like that. And Solar's already found a new team, which is pretty cool. In fact, Chinese team, I'm pretty sure. China is like, in a non-villain way, scooping up pro gamers and making leagues and doing almost like super secretive things, but not in a villainous way. Just actually supporting StarCraft 2 and just suddenly really investing into the outside of China market. Whereas, you know, the previous years, they were maybe dabbled a little bit here and there. Maybe you heard about the Chinese tournament, or there was one in China, like IEM, for instance, Shanghai, but they didn't necessarily do that well. But now it's like, okay, now they have a pro league, now they have a bunch of teams, now they have team houses being set up. Like, they're super investing into it. We'll see how that pans out. We're watching a completely normal build here, so I have freedom to talk whatever I want. So let's continue talking about teams. Storm picking up Ragnarok. Oh, gosh, I mean, like a year ago at this point. Maybe it's only 6 months. I don't know, but he's been on the team with plans to participate in WCS NA, similar to what happened to True. It was certainly an interesting pickup. I think at the time there wasn't really a lot of great performances from Ragnarok, but then there was a period where he kind of had this like sudden spike where he was like, oh shit, like what's going on here? I don't remember if that was like before, during, or after the pickup, but he hasn't really lived up to it. Whatever that spike was, aside from a couple of notable knockouts, like Scarlet, apparently in the last server qualifier. But, you know, his like, I don't know exactly what their goal was with him either. I don't manage teams. But we do know that one of their goals is to get them to WSS NA, and unfortunately the visa process takes a very long time, so. Not happening yet, but hopefully sometime in 2019. I mean, hey, once True got all settled in America, he won Montreal and then went to BlizzCon, so. Hey, that could happen for Ragnarok, I guess. Yeah, he's, his name is RNK. I don't know if I want to call him that or if I'm gonna call him Ragnarok. Right? I could try and call him RNK, but you just increased the number of syllables I had to pronounce. Ragnarok. Oh, no, you didn't. No, it's the same amount of syllables. Well, you know what? It sounds weirder. RNK. Ragnarok's easier to say. We do have a Hellbat push finally ready to go with a Banshee. We have a lot of Spore Crawlers coming in from RNK. Decent amount of Queens, one of the Spore Crawlers being on the front line, so he's prepared for the Banshees for sure. Maybe not so much for the Hellbats, but a Banlist is on the way, and Queens can try and buy some time. That Spore Crawler is going to definitely help with the Banshee, but she's actually a little bit to the left of it, so she is going completely unseen right now. So one Queen gets torn down. The other Queen's doing a great job against the Hellbats with the help of the Ling buffer. Ragnarok had already set up his queens in a concave on creep, so he's able to micro them. So while their damage is being done, it's really not as much as it could have been. Oh, very bad time to remove that Spore Crawler, so he loses the queen with the transfuse. So that's 2 queens down. Not exactly the push that you would be hoping for, I suppose, as a Terran player. You're hoping to dig in deep into the mineral line and actually get a couple of queens more, but not a bad one either. Behind this, TY is not going to go into mech, despite getting a Raven. He's actually going to go into bio, double Junior Bay, more barracks on the way, so a couple more Hellions to make sure that a counter Ling flood of any type, you know, small or large, doesn't actually give him trouble. And then, I guess with the Raven, and what is this going to be, like 5 Hellions when he swaps off maybe? He will have the potential to clean up some creep. I wouldn't expect him to go more than 5 Hellions. That's like a decent amount to be what Hellions usually are, but okay, he's going to dive forward with these ones, so maybe not 5? No, he still has 5. I'm pretty sure he's going to swap that off. Okay, there we go. And he's going to put it on barracks, right? Doesn't quite have enough Marines to make it worthwhile to swap the starport right over to the reactor. So, okay. I'm glad I could call that. 1-1's on the way with Stim. Combat shields will time up pretty nicely with that. And the 2 medevacs as well. So we'll have that follow-up to medevac attack. But it seems like that Spire might be done in time to make a couple mutas to stop that drop. I mean, the timing is more dependent on like where the drop goes, right? How offensive TY is with it, but we'll see. 2 Banshees still live. Kind of forgot about those. They're going to be able to help out the Hellions clear up creep spread. You don't usually see the Raven combine to do this, although like everyone and their mother who doesn't actually play like at a pro level, because not many pros think that this is totally worth it, will be like, why don't Terrans just make a Raven all the time? I mean, it's so good at clean up creep spread. And they have to explain how surprisingly difficult it is to control this Raven, and how little it seems to help out with creep spread regardless of its, you know, possible potential. Okay, we all have potential inside of us. All of us could be Ravens that cast anti-armor missiles on queens and clean up 10 creep tumors, but be honest, okay? Most of us only clear up 2 creep tumors and cast an auditor to kill an overlord. That's what you gotta live with, guys. It's life. But seriously, the Raven can be hard to control. And more often than not, as soon as the Hellion portion is done, regardless of how much creep tumors you've cleaned up and how much they've had to replace, they typically die once you get into the Marine push, especially if you're going to go for, like, Widow Mines. You know, with the tank push, maybe you do have that nice slow siege up and you push forward and you can control the Raven before they try and swamp you. But with Widow Mines, it is certainly more about continuous pushing, trying to outmaneuver your opponent. And Ravens not necessarily work with that. They're not, like, slow. That's not necessarily the problem. It's just that they are both too slow and too fast compared with medevacs and Marines. So they usually get lost in the movement. So it is Widow Mines, but first we have this tank push that still has a lot of fodder for. You know, we still have these Hellbats that came in. We still have the 2 Banshees. Where is that Raven? There she is. He is? It is? Whatever. A couple of Marines do get taken out by those Banelings, but that was mostly to deal with the Hellbats. The Muta is doing a great job trying to take out those tanks that are in a very pesky situation, pesky spot, but not really able to do so. So in order to save the Hatchet, which he does not save, the timing there just a little bit missed. He tries to run forward, but even kind of misses the mark on the tank for a couple seconds extra. So there's another tank shot that wasn't supposed to happen. Can't deal with the Marines. They unloaded a little too fast, and even still, they might be able to unload again. There's something on the low ground to help the Mutas out here. So as the unload goes down, he says every single medevac he brought to the main with him, a decent amount of Marines, and behind this he was dealing with, I believe, Ling counters, run-bys, maybe wraparound, something along those lines, but he was stopping it from happening. So the Mutas got into the SCV line, did like a very mediocre amount of damage. Yeah. Wait, no. They did no damage. It's TY's workers. Okay, well. Then, yeah, the Mutas aren't doing so hot right now. Not that they can't do well. I mean, that's the thing about Mutas. If you live long enough, eventually they're going to get into a count of 20, 25, and suddenly, even at 18 here, they kill the missile turret. Marines hop out of the bunker to help out. Nice little placement with the bunker, too. Helps out against run-bys on top of supply depots. Raven, no! Oh, it's not going to be targeted. I thought for sure. I thought for sure, Z's. But instead tried to go into the main, which TOI was already covering. I drop off to the side. I mean, you knew where the mutas are. It feels like you can't drop against mutas, and to a degree, it's supposed to be more punished, even if they're not necessarily immediately found. But you are still supposed to. It's just a matter of, well, being good enough to do multiple actions at once, right? But then knowing how to read, like, how they're going to use the mutas, being able to pressure and see where the lings are as well, and actually get them to not just leave stuff in the main base, not just leave their mutas off to the side to catch it. You need to constantly pressure, constantly drop, even if it's only a single drop. Bunker is taken out. SCVs do go down here, so there's more even trade. Maybe he'll rebuild the bunker, maybe not, but things are a lot more about this push here. Marauders on the front line to soak up any banelings that are just carelessly thrown away. They're going to get the hatchery easy peasy. That's where the mutas can be helpful. There's so many roles that the mutas can fill. They're very interesting, really cool units. It's just that sometimes hydras are a little bit easier, a little more direct. What style do you want to play here? But they can certainly help out against that Marauder front, the Marauder wall. And they weren't around. They were being pesky or trying to be pesky, but so far TY has always had army back at home to deal with it. So this is a very good game for TY. Not that Ragnarok's out of it yet, but all of these really awesome moves that he's trying to do, that any one of these moves, if they are not accounted for, the mutas in the main base, the lings at the third and the fourth, suddenly TY is having a lot more struggle. Like, that was hard English. He's having more struggles. Yes. And is not as aggressive, right? Maybe he got that tank push down on the fourth base, but then this push over here would have been pulled back because his third base is under attack. His fourth base was being canceled, or killed, actually. So, because it wasn't planetary. Those type of things will happen. Instead, things are really quite good. TY even has his main base floated over. I mean, that was a while ago. He's already planted down supply depots in its location. And the game is going to that late game. I mean, as good as TY's been playing, and as much as Ragnarok's plans have been foiled here, he has had the macro behind it. He hasn't taken extreme damage, and really, at most, it was the hatcheries. I mean, there was 11 drones as well with this hatchery here, but he had a lot of minerals to double expand, which is why this is coming up now, as it was killed, but it was part of the double expand, and even has a space. And he's going into ultras. So as he loses the space, this is also going to be drones. That is a costly kill. Argon was hoping not to have to deal with, but he gets some revenge. Ling's on top of the third, fourth, fifth. That's a fifth. It's the main, but it's a fifth. The Raven is not going to be used strictly for the auto turret defense, I guess. That's an interesting use, but at this point, taking it with the army is going to be a little difficult, so he's just scanning ahead, not using the Raven for what you would assume it would be used for. And another base is going to fall. The server lag is just that, it's server lag. Everyone who goes to Korea, who's not from Korea, experiences this. It's much better than it used to be, but it also still exists, which is worse than it used to be. Drop over here is cleaned up, but just continuing to keep tabs on where the army is. This over here sees where the mutas are. The drop in the main could have seen more army. The army's actually in the middle of the map, where there is still a decent amount of creep spread, but TY's haven't really been pushing to the middle. That is kind of a death zone, not just on creep spread, but also being able to be fully surrounded. So he's always been pushing to the sides, and he's been taking out bases. So Ragnarok will need a fifth base here. It's a little funny, because this like fourth was his fifth, and as such it still has a lot of minerals, but this one even still has a lot of minerals, because there's been so many base snipes. Ragnarok has been able to keep his loss, I guess, in check is the best way to put it, but he's still drastically behind. I mean, that's TVZ, you kind of expect it, but the bases he's been losing too. Ooh, this is a little difficult. This is usually a point where the Zerg player is maxed out, hasn't yet had to use their ultras offensively, and is maybe banking 1,000. Instead, there's no bank whatsoever, and now Ragnarok even going in to try and take on this army off of creep. There wasn't a lot to deal with the ultras. There's so many banelings as well that even with decent splits here from TY, it is just too much to deal with. The Widow Mines did not really help out. Oh, I guess it kind of helped out there. But there weren't a lot of them to help out versus the severe baneling flood. And not that they really help out versus ultras either, but you know, there just wasn't a lot of splash. There's mostly a bio army, and splits can only do so much. Now, splits do still make it very cost-effective, so I do believe we have an increase in the resources loss difference in favoring TY. But, yeah. Ragnarok is holding on. This is a pretty damn good game. TY could certainly make a slip up. I feel like that's kind of what Ragnarok is hoping for. That's what we've been trying to force out, right? With all the run bys that happen, yes, you want direct SCV kills or a cheeky surround on a command center, but you're also hoping to mess up the Terran, make them feel like they need to push when they shouldn't, make them not pay attention to their push when they should be, and then they suddenly lose 40 more supply than they really should have. Or, hey, in extreme situations, we've all been there, even lose the game to an immediate counter. But it's not happening yet. Ragnarok is still kind of hopeful for that. As the game goes on, he is still in a bit worse of a position. I mean, he's completed his hive tech. He's got Broodlords here. He's got a lot of Ultras that lived in that first fight, which is great for him. But TY is kind of a master of the super late game. He's already got a lot of Liberators to help out. He's getting Vikings as well, knowing there's Broodlords here. And he does have the ability to control the sky, despite how many mutas are still left over. With the fact that it's bio. You know, it's not Thors that are going to be clumsy trying to push into Broodlings. It's bio that once, if ever, the Banelings are all gone. And I don't see any Banelings right now, guys. The Marines can stand underneath those Broodlords and be super effective, actually. Not even barely effective, super effective. So a nice run by does force mining off of this third base, but Liberator helps out there too. TY having... Oh, I thought his Liberators were kept back here. I'm glad to see that they aren't, but that's a mistake that certainly a lot of Terrans can make as well, is thinking that they can leave X portion of their army somewhere and go back with Y portion, and suddenly you needed the reverse, right? Liberator should have been at home instead of on the front line, something like that. TY not making that mistake. Comes forward, snipes a Broodlord, I think there was 5. And actually just has such a powerful army. The Ultras can't tackle this. They're going to be immediately shot down by the Liberators. This is actually where you really want a lot of Lings and Banelings. Try and get a wraparound to try and survive. How many Liberator shots there are, Ultras won't be able to. They think Ragnarok is just going to slowly but surely lose out in this army. Wouldn't mind if you get offensive shots on the Broodlords of all things. Who would expect that? And the Marines are still alive here to help out. Marauders are actually a little clumped up there, so they're being taken out by the Ultras, but doesn't matter in the end. The Vikings helping out against the Mutas, the Broodlords, the Liberators still alive and kicking as well, unsieged. Chase after them, and that is that. TY takes game number 1. Just really solid, consistent TVZ there from the early game to the late game. That was good. Ragnarok was not so far behind, but the pacing, the momentum was all in favor of TY. Ragnarok playing with the English diva announcer. If I'm not mistaken, when you go into a person's vision, it translates to the observer's language. So, if you watched Ragnarok stream, maybe he's using the Korean diva announcer, but if I watch his vision, I think I get the English one. I could be wrong, but I feel like I knew this because I watched, like, TY stream or something like that, and he was using whatever announcer, and then I watched his vision in a game, and he wasn't using it. He was using the English version. I was like, well, that doesn't compute. So, I think that's what happens. The point is, though, he's using diva, and that's still... Even though the Korean diva is better, it's still not great. It's still, I just judge harshly. Alright. In the top right of Stasis, a map that TY lets through in all the matches apparently, is the Red Zerg Ragnarok. Oh, in the top left, as the Blue Terran, it is TY. And he is doing something a little cheeky here. Okay, then he's going for 3 racks. Third SCV is on the way to complete the roundup of barracks. Ragnarok is going to scout this? Yeah. I mean, just barely, but he'll scout it. So that's important to know. That is a lot of dead space on the high grounds, that if your Overlord wasn't scouting and this one's actually moving to the left, that'd be a lot of bunkers down. So he sees it. He knows about it. That wasn't even just barely. That was both barracks. Will he see the third one, though? He's going to try. He doesn't see it, but it is just further back. Most Terrans are doing this nowadays, I think. Where usually they would put it down here or something like that. They wouldn't care if it was also scouted. Most Terrans are kind of hiding it behind something. In this case, they're even hiding it behind the gas blockers, whatever the hell they're called. Overlord would see it, but maybe drones would have trouble microing against it, so... That's exactly what Ragnarok tries to do. He tries to send the drones to stop something, but you can't stop the barracks, so in this case, he's just stopping the bunkers. That is still very important, though. Now, TY doesn't have to build bunkers necessarily, but he wants to. With so much denied mining time and maybe a drone killer too, once they actually engage, he could try and play that style. Just bulk up a lot of Marines, but you do want the bunkers and you go for three racks. More SCVs were pulled though, so I'm saying the bunker might be only one of many problems. But now it's going to be a huge problem because there's so many SCVs to complete that. Even if 1, 2, 3, 4 SCVs are sniped, the bunker could still be completed by the 5th and 6th SCV. And in fact, that one SCV, oh, it does get sniped by the Spinecrawler. Nice focus fire, but this one finishes it. It's only one bunker though. Full surround, Queen and Spinecrawler DPS being included here. He's going to pull back the drones and he thinks it's likely that he'll still beat the bunker, but I don't think that was correct. He loses 6 drones, but might have had to lose a few more. I think he just loses the game. Oh, CY's gonna call down the mule to repair this bunker. The hatchery's under extreme fire. Ragnarok did not have many minerals to use because he pulled the drones. That was really all he got, and now a couple of Lings are gonna come forward, but they're not gonna be able to help. I think it was an all or nothing situation there. He either had to lose all of his drones but kill the bunker, or he just had to, or he died. GG.